Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast, Season 16, Episode 8. Today we are speaking with MeatHead, who is the author of the new cookbook, The MeatHead Method, a BBQ Hall of Famer's secrets and science on barbecue, grilling, and outdoor cooking with 114 recipes that is out in bookstores today. Today, our host Dean Jones will be talking with MeatHead, who is a member of the BBQ Hall of Fame. His book, MeatHead, was a New York Times bestseller and a top cookbook according to Southern Living. Known as the BBQ Whisperer behind the website AmazingRibs.com, MeatHead's expertise stems from a passion for barbecue ignited early on. He has judged numerous prestigious food and beverage competitions globally and has been a pioneer in online food education since 1990. A former journalist and educator at Cornell and Le Cordon Bleu, he also founded the Beverage Testing Institute and holds a master's in art and technology. We now take you to Dean's conversation with MeatHead.
So for this talk, I'm going to go through the question. At any time you want to redo a question, we can stop. I can edit anything out.
Well, I think some of the stuff we started off kicking around, it was just casual, but the idea that we are now in an era where there's a lot of there are a lot of nerds in the cooking world now. That the movement of nerdists, modernist cuisine, whatever you want to call it, is really contemporary, and understandably, we're in an era socially where everybody is high tech. I mean, we're carrying around a computer in our back pocket that is bigger than more powerful than the computer that went to the moon. So people want to know, why do I do step one? What happens if I skip step two? And we have to explain. Every time you step into the kitchen or onto out to your grill, you're doing a physics and chemistry experiment. And you're changing. I mean, you're dealing with flame, fire, heat, smoke, and heat is a form of energy. And then you've got protein and carbohydrates and fats and amino acids. And so all this stuff with chemistry and physics is, I don't want to make my book sound like a boring chemistry and physics book. I once taught at Cornell, and I had a classroom next to Carl Sagan.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was a photography student at the University of Florida, and I took classes from Jerry Ullsman, who was, similarly considered one of the great photographers of the 20th century. And they both had this marvelous skill of being able to speak to the novice and teach the novice, but not lose the expert. And that's what I've tried to do, is make the science behind cooking accessible and easy to understand, and maybe a little funny.
It's funny that, we are really in a time of nerd, because I remember, like, when I was a kid, my grandfather would barbecue, and he would always cremate the meat. He was from the South, so for some reason he thought he had to cremate everything, and we were always urging, please don't continue cooking the food. Please don't continue. And he just, for some reason, he felt the need to do that. My father reluctantly cooked barbecue, and everything was burnt on the outside, raw on the inside. So I grew up with bad barbecue. And also, bread, my mom would try and make bread, and like bread making was still kind of a new thing people were doing, because it was, we had Wonder Bread. And now we have all these people doing stuff. And I'll go to like an outdoor party or hang out with people somewhere at a bar, and inevitably we'll talk about the science of food, right? People love this now. This is great.
Well, yes, and that's some of what I try to do. People will ask me if this new book, how this new book is different from the last book, and there's a lot of new stuff in here that I didn't have room for in the last book, or that I didn't even know at that time. But I do cover some of the really simple basics. You talked about black on the outside and raw on the inside. That's because we cook too hot.
Yeah.
Um, you burn the outside, but it takes time for the energy to progress from the outside to the center. So if you dial it down the heat, you give the food, or in let's say a steak, you give it more time for the energy to move from the outer edge to the center without burning the outer edge.
Yeah.
So I mean that's one of the first things I try to teach people is cut back, dial it back, take it easy, go gentle. You don't have to immolate your meal.
It's nice to have something to look at that can give you the straight information because you have it indexed so that it's not something that we have to work hard to find out what we want to know. Everything's broken down into chapters. I had a problem where I was given a barbecue grill to use by a relative, and it was assumed that because I was a guy, I would know how to barbecue. And I don't know how many things that I ruined the first 5 or 6 times because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I would have loved to have my hands on this because there's no manual with a barbecue grill. You get it, and it's like, they give you some cursory instructions, but otherwise they're assuming you know what you're doing. And I was just like, I thought it would be easy, and I was completely wrong. It's not easy if you don't know the science behind it.
Well, no, there's a great deal of mythology surrounding it. I mean, you learned from your dad. So did
Yeah.
I. And my dad learned from his dad. And so it's passed down. And there's just a huge amount of mythology and that's something I've become known for, is as a myth buster. And I do a lot of myth busting in this book. I mean, the classic example is, let's see if I can. Yeah, well, let's see. It's hard to see, but there's several bookshelves in this room
Yeah.
that are just loaded with barbecue books, and they all say one thing that is wrong. Soak the wood chips for an hour or two before you throw it on the fire, and that will give you more smoke, they claim. And it's not true. Um, there's a reason they build boats out of wood. It doesn't absorb water.
Yeah.
You get wood chips or wood chunks, and I've done this. You weigh them, then soak them an hour or 2 hours overnight. I've done it overnight. Then you pat the surface dry, and it weighs almost exactly, maybe 2% water gain, and that's because there's some coarseness in the surface of the wood. But it doesn't penetrate. Slice the wood open, cut the wood open. It's bone dry in the center. So what happens? You've got this wet wood, and you throw it on the fire, and you see all this smoke. Well, guess what? It's not smoke. It's steam. It's the water on the surface.
Wow. Yeah.
It's the water on the surface. Water boils at 212, but fire, but wood begins to smoke at around 500.
Yeah.
So you throw it on the fire, and it gets up to 212, and it steams, and it stops going up in temperature until all the water is gone. Then it will go up to 500 and start to burn and smoke.
Yeah.
So wet wood is not you see all that white stuff, it's steam. Hold a mirror into it. It'll steam up. Basic concept that my dad taught me and his dad taught him, soak the wood chips. Doesn't work.
Can we talk a little bit about AmazingRibs.com? I want to go back to
Sure.
how you started that and
Sure.
what that meant for you in your life.
Say that again.
Can we talk a little bit about AmazingRibs.com?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You asked a question. What?
What did that mean for you once it started and took off?
Oh. Well, all right. I had been the wine critic for the Washington Post and the Chicago Tribune.
Oh, wow.
I published a magazine about wine called International Wine Review. It was a pretty good magazine.
I remember that.
I won the Chicago Wine Tasting Championship. I was on the U.S. wine tasting team that got its butt kicked by the French team in the World Trade Center when it was still standing. So I was a wino. I had worked my way through college in a liquor store and got really interested in wine. And so I was into wine. And then as an extension of wine, I loved eating. I loved food, but I didn't know how to cook. I sold the wine magazine in the year 2000. and had to reinvent myself. And, I'd done my master's in photography, so I thought I'd be a photographer. But I looked around and decided, boy, that's a really competitive field, and it's really hard to make a
Yeah.
living in it. And my neighbor was a butcher. And we were talking over the fence one day, and he was bragging about his ribs, and I was bragging about my ribs. And the next thing I know, we had a throwdown, and our wives were our judges. And I started, before the throwdown, I am being anal. I had to research everything I could about how to cook ribs, and there wasn't anything on the internet. And
Right.
there was like only one or two decent barbecue books out there. And I said, well, this is an opportunity that could be fun. I'll write a book about ribs, and and in those days, I'm that old, the internet was pretty much alphabetic, hence
Yeah.
amazing. It was like the Yellow Pages, Amazing Ribs. So I named it amazingribs.com because it started with an A. And I wrote a couple of recipes and built the website because it was really easy to build a website in those days. HTML was simple. Now it's god awful. And pretty soon Google found it and liked it. And I expanded from ribs to pulled pork to brisket to you name it. I mean, there's just about anything you can cook outdoors on there. There's 2,000 free pages, recipes,
Wow.
science, technique. Yeah.
That's immense.
Science, technique, recipe. It's the most popular barbecue and grilling website. We get a couple of million people a month that come down there. And then we have now in 2014, we did something else that really hadn't been done much. We opened a membership portion. But in those days, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the others had firewalls to the entire site. But we
Right.
left most of the site free, and we just created a community. We built a community called the Pitmaster Club, and members share recipes and their reviews of grills and smokers and restaurants you got to visit next time you're in St. Louis. And it's tremendous. 15,000 paid members now. It's only $30 a year. And so the website has grown. And the books are just an extension of that. I love the internet. I love the website. I made my living on it. But you go to Google and you type in brisket, and it takes you to a web page on my website that is quite long and detailed, and it links to another about marinades, and to another about something called the Texas crutch, and all of a sudden you're going this way and that way. Books have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
And I write a book so that I start with the basic ideas and get more advanced and more complex, and then the recipes that apply it all. And it all flows. It makes sense. And websites don't flow. And they don't make sense in that regard. So I really love writing books.
Look, it shows. It shows you have a love of it, because I feel like just looking at the art direction of this, which is brilliant, and it looks kind of like a textbook, like we were talking about earlier, and it has kind of that neat feel, and it breaks things down like when you're studying biology. Obviously, we have a breakdown. You don't just rush into it. You kind of have like an explanation process, and it has different categories, and you have that in the MeatHead method, your new book. So I
You
just wanted.
mentioned the art, though. Did you notice that I did all the photography?
I did not until you just mentioned that, and then I
I
looked.
did my master's in photography. I did all the photography, and some of the food photos I'm really proud of.
Well, you should
The
be, because they're glorious. They make you kind of want to try it. They're really.
the illustrations were made by my neighbor, who she lives one house behind me. She's an artist for the Brookfield Zoo, and she does all the illustrations for the website and my two books. So
They're really great. I mean, it
thank
really
you.
captures the whole thing. It all ties
Some
together
of the
beautifully.
photographs are better than others, but I'm very proud of the photography.
And yeah, you should be, because it's just really gorgeous, and especially when it kind of gets to detail, like the marbling and stuff like that, the
Mm-hmm.
different types of meat and stuff. It really kind of, basically carries the point home. I just love so much of this too. Like you have such neat little things, like talking about minutia that I didn't expect, like the different types of peppercorns, um, and explaining different cooking techniques and processes. I just love it. It's a work of love. And
I'm glad you think so. You mentioned the peppercorns. One of the things that I've tried to do with this book, the first book really covered the classic barbecue canon,
yeah,
ribs and pulled pork and steak and chicken and stuff. The basics, and so the stuff everybody wants to be able to master in their backyard. In this book, I've tried to take it to the next level. And it's a reflection of what I think is going on in the real world. I've brought Asian ingredients into the recipes. I've brought Spanish ingredients into the recipes, and Italian techniques and French techniques, to take the reader outside of the standard barbecue canon box and demonstrate that just about anything you can do indoors, you can do outdoors, only better. And so I mean, I do have the classics, ribs and brisket, but what I've done is those recipes are not just your standard backyard. They're the recipes that the competition champions use.
yes.
So they're a little more elaborate, a little more complex, but the results are just a little better. So there's something for everyone there.
I really agree, because like while I know there, of course, there's some stuff in here that's like for the most advanced level people, but I love the fact that like somebody like me can kind of come in and look at this and get a good explanation on things, and I can be like, oh, okay, that's why we do this, and it has great explanations on things. Like the one that I needed the most was the conduction of energy on a
Yeah,
grill.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's three types of energy in a grill. You have convection energy, convection air, just warm air circulating around the meat or the vegetable, whatever you're cooking. Then you have conduction. When it sits on top of hot metal, the metal conducts heat faster and more efficiently than warm air, and that's why you get grill marks. And then there's radiation, and that's when your food is sitting directly above flame or glowing coals. It's infrared radiation, and that's very intense. Not as intense as conduction, but much more intense than convection. And once you understand that, then you can start figuring out, okay, I have a really thick steak. If I excuse me, if I put it directly above hot coals, I'm going to have the black outside and the raw center. So
Yeah.
I've got to be gentle with it. I'm going to put it over on the indirect side. I'm going to divide the grill in half. Hot on one side, indirect convection air on the other, and gently warm it. And then when it gets close to done, then I'm going to move it over to the direct infrared side and get a good sear on it there, but don't burn it. And that's temperature control. And all cooking is about temperature control. So, you start learning the different kinds of energy, and you can significantly improve your cooking. And with that comes the most important tool that I preach all the time is good digital thermometer. You need a good
Yes.
digital thermometer to be a good cook, indoors or outdoors. A medium rare steak is the most tender and the most juicy. And a medium rare steak is 130 to 135. Not a penny more, not a penny less. And the only way you can get there is with a good digital thermometer. Now, if you're relying on one of those old dial thermometers in the kitchen drawer, they're not accurate. They're very slow. Take it out, bring it to your driveway, back your car over it. It's a piece of garbage. Get a good, and you can get a good digital thermometer. They'll give you a precision reading in under 5 seconds for about $20-$30. And the website, we have an electrical engineer on the website who reviews and rates thermometers. So you can go to the website and look up and find a model you want. We don't sell them, but we'll take you to where you can buy them.
It's funny you mentioned my son just bought one, and I've been kind of envious of it. Seeing him use it, I'm like, okay, I've got to get into this century and get one.
Yeah. Go to our website and find one in the price range that you want. We rate them, and then we kind of give them awards: platinum medal, gold medal, silver. find a platinum or a gold medal that is, in your price range. You can spend up to $100 or more on the top of the line. But $30 will get you a darn good thermometer. And you'll never overcook a steak again. And steak's not cheap.
I wanted to ask you, since you've been reviewing wine and since you started AmazingRibs.com, you've moved from that to becoming a BBQ Hall of Famer. You're a New York Times bestselling author. How has this changed your life over time since all this stuff has kind of come to be?
Okay, here comes the philosophy. I have been an entrepreneur since I was 25. While I was in college, I worked in ABC Liquors in Gainesville, Florida, and had a bunch of other jobs, odd jobs, part-time jobs, so that I could pay for my college education. And then I started striking out on my own and doing things on my own. And of course, we watch the Shark Tank and we portray the great American entrepreneur as the rock beds of the bedrock of Americans' business and stuff. I have been an entrepreneur, owner of my own business, my own boss, more than 50 years. And I sometimes regret it. I mean, it's brought me fame and fortune. I'm done well financially. I'm in the Hall of Fame. I'm well known in the barbecue and culinary world. Even fancy French chefs know who I am. That's a great honor. But for 50 years, I've been working 7 days a week, 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
And that's a killer. And it's very typical of the entrepreneur.
Yes.
And I have missed a great deal of life. I'm going to be 76 in June. And I have not taken many vacations. Fortunately, we don't have children, so I'm not neglecting children. And that was a decision made both by my wife, who was a scientist who was on the upward path, and by me, the entrepreneur, because we knew we would not be good parents. And then we have just, it's been exhausting. It's been rewarding and it's been exhausting. And when I was in the wine business back in 50 years ago, I had a job offer to represent the Torres wines. They're marvelous wines from Spain, and they were just opening a property in California. Marimar Torres, who ran the operation, great lady. They asked me if I would come on board and be the sales manager nationwide.
Yeah.
And the pay was great. And it was pretty much a 9-to-5 job, had health care, had vacation. And I often wonder what my life would be like if I had taken that job, Yeah. So, the lesson there is I watch Shark Tank periodically, and you see these people, and, the sharks shut them down. They forget it. You're not going to get the money. They walk off and they stare in the camera and say, I don't care what they say. I'm going to do it anyhow. And it's like, didn't you listen? You're going to go right ahead. You're going to go bankrupt. You're going to lose your house. You're going to lose your wife. You're going to be embarrassed. Take their advice. Get a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
So, that's a roundabout answer, but it's an answer that I think about often. I'm very happy with the way my life turned out. And at age 76, I can afford to look back with some perspective because I don't know how many years I have left. And I have to wonder, what would life be like had I chosen the other? 2 roads diverged in the yellow woods. And sorry, I could not travel both.
Alton Brown did the foreword for the MeatHead method. That must have been thrilling to have him write and it's so funny too. It's not just a straightforward gushing review. It's very funny. And
not only that, but the first book, I don't know if you know who Kenji Lopez Alt is.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, Kenji wrote the foreword for the first book. So
yeah,
I've been very fortunate. attract the kind words of two of my heroes.
I really just I loved it. It was so just perfect, and it really
Yeah.
did kind of highlight the book, especially the very end part, which I thought was so telling. And as a librarian and bookseller, I love this. And that was, he wished they made a waterproof version so we could keep it out at the grill. And I thought, I love that. That's such a true thing. I think that people don't think about. But this is the kind of book that could be like, you could read it in your den, you could use it in the kitchen, you could have it out of the grill with you. It's really one of those books that would travel around your house with you.
Yeah, he was very kind.
Now, I want to circle back to talk about your history in judging wine and different types of food, and working with food and drink communities. How has this broad perspective and experience influenced your work with Amazing Ribs, and then you're writing your books,
Well,
MeatHead and the MeatHead Method?
I think it's largely responsible for this book.
Yeah.
The first book is pretty much straight barbecue, but this book has gochujang. This book has Spanish sauces and sausages and stuff. This book brings in the world, the culinary world. It really, grilling and smoking is just another way of cooking, and a grill is just an oven, only it's an outdoor oven with a lousy thermostat. Doesn't have a thermostat. So yeah, I mean, I've had the pleasure, especially when I was into wine. I got to travel a great deal. I mean, I went to Spain, I went to France, I went to Italy. I ate at Chateau de Chem with the proprietor. So I've had marvelous culinary experiences, and that has influenced me in my cooking and my recipe development and my writing. So yeah, absolutely. It's all part of the vocabulary.
What about the difference between the two books? Your first book, as we mentioned, was Meathead: The Science of Great Barbecue and Grilling. What changed for you over time, between that and your writing for the Meathead Method? I know you talked about there's like Spanish influences and Asian influences, but what technical differences are there between that time period?
Well, there are new methods. For example, um, you like Chinese food?
Absolutely.
Of course, everybody does. And you've probably tried to cook it at home, right?
Yep.
And it's pretty good, but it's not quite the same.
No.
Even if you've got a good wok.
Yep.
And one of the reasons is that your kitchen stove just doesn't get hot enough. I mean, if you've ever wandered into a Chinese kitchen or watched a Chinese chef on YouTube, those woks sit on top of a volcano.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference, because when you stir fry at home and you throw chunks of beef in you throw some oil in and chunks of beef, they start to brown, but after a few minutes, the water starts to come out.
Yeah.
And before long, you're not frying anymore, you're braising.
Yes.
And it still turns out delicious, but it's not fried. It's not.
Right.
So, well, one day I'm out in the backyard and I'm starting up my charcoal grill, and I'm using a gadget called a charcoal chimney, which you may be familiar with. It looks like a coffee can, and you put some newspaper on the bottom and the charcoal on top. You light the newspaper and it ignites the charcoal. And I'm puttering around, and I turn around and I look at the chimney sitting there on the top of the grill. And there is a tapered blue flame coming out of the top of that chimney. And it looks like the back end of an F-16.
Yeah.
So I run inside and I get my wok and throw it on top, and I get one of those infrared thermometers. It's a gun that shoots a beam. And I take the wok is well over 1,000 degrees. In fact, the metal is starting to glow. And I've seen
wow.
I've seen that in Chinese restaurants.
Yeah.
So the next day I come out here and I do this again, only I have a mise en place ready for a Chinese dish. fantastic. Gets really hot. It's absolute. So all of a sudden, wok cooking is now for the grill. It's an outdoor technique. It's one of the methods in the MeatHead method that I talk about. If you love Asian foods, if you want to cook properly on a wok, you're not going to get the adequate heat off your stovetop, but you can get it on top of a charcoal chimney. Sucker is amazing. How about fried chicken? You like fried chicken?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. Who doesn't?
Everybody loves fried chicken, but you don't do it at home, do you?
No.
No. And the reason you don't is because the last time you did it, it totally wrecked the top of your stove, the counter next to it. You had oil on the floor. You slip and break your neck. It set off the smoke alarm, and the kitchen stunk for 3 days.
Yep.
Turn on your gas grill, one side hot, one side not. Get a cast iron Dutch oven, put 2 inches of oil in it, roll your chicken around in the flour and the buttermilk or whatever you're going to do, and drop it in that cast iron Dutch oven on your gas grill. Who cares if it smokes out there? Yeah. Who cares if it spatters? Set the temperature, get the oil up to 350 to 375. That's the magic number for deep frying. And this stuff comes out of the oil. Fantastic. You give it a shake, let it drip dry, and then you put it on the other side of the grill where there is no heat, the indirect side, and just let it sit there and roast while the next batch of chicken is in the oil. It stays hot. In fact, if you take it out and you temp it and it's just a few degrees low, it'll continue to cook over there. So deep frying, chicken, onion rings. It's an outdoor grilled dish.
I love it.
Another one of the methods we talk about in the book. So there's a lot of fun stuff. I work with koji, which is a mold which is used for making miso, and you can dunk meat in koji, and it's really cool the effect it has on the flavors. I work with MSG. Yeah. There's no need to be afraid of it, and it does some nice things to food. So I bring a lot of new methods that are not often thought about as barbecue and grilling, but can be.
One of the parts of the book that I was really impressed by, and for me it was so important because I don't know how, and I know that everybody listening to this has had this happen. You use a marinade, you cook the meat, and it tastes nothing like the marinade. And also things like I know you talk about the effectiveness of beer can chicken in many traditional marinades.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that a little bit? Because that's such a great part of the book that is so important, I think.
Well, beer can chicken is a beloved recipe, particularly among men.
Yeah.
It just looks cool.
Yeah.
And it tastes wonderful.
Yeah.
And it tastes wonderful for a very simple reason. It's roast chicken.
Yeah.
And roast chicken is always wonderful.
Yeah.
But the beer can has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
In fact, the beer can prevents it from being as good as it possibly could be. Okay, let's analyze why. You're going to take the chicken and the beer can out of the fridge at fridge temp, 38 degrees. Okay, 32 to 38 is your standard fridge temp to be safe. Don't let your fridge ever get over 40.
Yeah.
So you take it out around 38 degrees and you stick the beer can up the chicken's butt. You now have a unified thermal mass. Everything's the same temperature,
right,
or close to it. What you've made is a chicken koozie. You know what a koozie is? That's those styrofoam wrappers that you put around a beer can.
Yes.
To keep your hand from warming the beer. Yeah. So now you have a chicken koozie. It's 38 degrees. The two of them cook and progress at the same temperature. Even if the beer can came out at room temp, it doesn't matter. They're going to progress at around the same temperature. And your chicken is done at 165, 170 in that range. 160, I like 160. The beer can can't be hotter than the chicken.
Yeah.
So if the beer can is 165 to 170, it's not steaming. Steam is 212. Beer is 95% water. It's not steaming. So there's no vapor coming out of that beer to flavor the meat. If any did, by any chance, it would touch just the small amount of meat that's above the beer can under the shoulders. There's no way it can penetrate the meat. The meat is fully saturated. It's 75% water.
Yeah.
Meat is 75% water. It's fully saturated. There's no room in there for beer. You can even take a chicken and soak it in beer overnight, and you won't necessarily notice a beer flavor because the beer can't get in. And it certainly isn't traveling all the way down to the legs.
Right.
So it's not flavoring meat. And in fact, in many cases, and we tested this, the oil from the chicken, from the skin, drips into the beer can and coats the surface of the beer, which would prevent it from boiling if it was hot enough to boil. So the beer has nothing to do with it. And in fact, the metal can prevents the interior, the cavity, from browning.
Right.
And brown is beautiful. Whenever you can brown meat, you're building flavor. So it just, if you really want ultimate chicken, you break it down, because chicken thighs and legs like to be cooked a little longer than the chicken breast, or I should say to a higher temperature, 170, 175. Chicken breast, 160. And chicken breast is thick. Chicken legs are thin. Thick and thin, or thickness of meat, is a vital concept to understand.
Yeah.
Even vegetables, anything you're cooking, you need to pay attention to the thickness. If you have two steaks and one is 1.5 inches thick and the other is 1 inch thick, they're going to cook at a different rate. They're going to finish at a different time. One is going to be overcooked unless you're using a thermometer, and then you take the thin one out faster. And the same thing for chicken. So, yeah. So that's the story on beer can chicken. And I got to tell you, I wrote an article describing this, and we've done all the experiments. I got thermometer probes sticking in everything everywhere, and all the evidence is there. All the facts are there. And there are just some people in this world, here we are, I'm going to border on politics, who pay no attention to facts.
Yeah.
And you can't convince them. And they worship that little Buddha sitting on the beer can.
Yeah.
And they just think he is the godliest thing ever cooked. And how dare I besmirch it by intimating that it's not the world's best chicken. My beer can chicken's fantastic. Of course it is. It's roast chicken. Roast chicken's always fantastic if you don't overcook it.
Yeah.
So, and I've got a lot of blowback on that. You know, another one from the website that I've gotten a lot of blowback on. This is hysterical.
What?
I'm in Chicago. I'm going to test your knowledge of regional cuisines.
Okay.
What is the one thing you never put on a hot dog in Chicago?
Oh, ketchup.
That's right. And everybody knows this.
Yeah.
And it's hysterical. And now you're in San Francisco. There's a great scene in Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
Where he starts ranting and raving about idiots who put ketchup on their hot dogs. Yeah. And there's a whole bunch of literature and video and film and books about how sinful it is to put ketchup on a hot dog. Well, I mean, just between you and me, who cares?
Yeah.
But a lot of people do. And I wrote this article, and I wrote it with tongue deeply embedded in my cheek. And I got so much blowback. How dare you tell me I can't put ketchup on my hot dog? This is, America. This is not Russia. You can't, and it's like, oh my. And so I finally came to the conclusion that using ketchup on a hot dog robs you of your sense of humor.
That sounds right. You mentioned, and earlier we talked about your Asian influences in the cookbook. You had a few things in here I really liked. like black garlic and the gochujang. Can we talk about those ingredients and others you have in there that you've gotten to like love using?
We're in an era, we started maybe 5-10 years ago, where Americans fell in love with hot sauces.
Yes.
I mean, Tabasco's always been with us.
Yeah.
And there's always been small artisans making their own hot sauces from the different kinds of peppers all the way up to ghost hot peppers and so on. And then there's the help me now, the one with the rooster on the bottle. It's made
sriracha.
Sriracha took over and became very popular, partially because it's not scorching hot. It's got a nice balance. Well, gochujang is a Korean hot, it's really a paste. It's not so much a sauce. And it's a little tricky to dissolve if you're making a sauce. But it's marvelous. It's like a miso-based hot sauce. And so it has all the umami that miso has sort of a meaty flavor. And it's not all that hot, you know?
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of flavor, and you can taste red pepper in it, which I love when I'm dealing with hot sauce. So it's really good stuff. And so we've brought that into a couple of the recipes. Black garlic. This is another one. Nobody ever heard of black garlic until 3, 4, 5 years ago. And it's still not common. But I've seen it on grocery store shelves. And basically, it's just garlic in its clove form that has been fermented.
Yeah.
And it turns black. And when it's black, it's sweet. It's really sweet. It tastes a bit like balsamic vinegar.
Yeah.
And it's a marvelous ingredient to play with. It's not a substitute for regular garlic.
No.
It's its own thing. I mean, the difference between black garlic and garlic is greater than the difference between garlic and garlic powder. At least garlic powder can be used as a substitute for garlic. Black garlic is not, it's just apples and oranges. But it has a marvelous flavor. It's kind of expensive, but you can buy it online. Amazon sells it and other places. If you've never played with it, you got to buy it. You got to try it. And I used it in this book with a scallops recipe, scallops and butter.
Ooh.
It's tricky. The trickiest part of it is sticky. When you slice it, it just sticks to your knife.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to mince it, because it's so soft and it's almost clay-like. But it's very nice. A lot of fun to play with.
You've got 114 recipes in the cookbook, which are just amazing. There's a few that I want to point out: the ultimate prime rib and the pho with leftover brisket. Do you have any favorites, or was there any like interesting process developing these recipes?
Funny. I worked with a food stylist who also was a trained chef. A great guy. Richard Longi, and he and I cooked together, and then we took the food down to the studio. The studio's in my basement, and we set up the set and the shot and did the photography. By the way, the photography is really interesting. I lit the set with a pen light, a little tiny flashlight, no bigger than a pen. The whole room is totally dark, and I take this little flashlight and I light the food by moving the flashlight around. It's a dance. I'm physically moving around. I'm physically moving around the set with the flashlight, lighting the food, and there's maybe 20 photographs assembled in Photoshop in layers for most of those food shots. So I'll illuminate a drumstick and a leg, and then I'll come back and I'll illuminate the breast, and then I'll illuminate the wine glass, and it's a very hands-on feeling, and it's fascinating. Photographers get a whiff of it early because they notice. Usually, when you're doing traditional photography, there's a single light source or a dominant light source. It's called the key light. And so you can see the shadow, you can see where the key light is. If you look carefully at some of my images, it's hard to find a single light source because there is none. The
Yeah.
light's moving. But it gives you a nice chiaroscuro effect. And I wanted that. I wanted some sort of artistry this time.
Well, yeah, because like I'm looking at Dorie's pork a la Normand.
One of my favorites.
It looks like a painting. It's beautiful.
One of my favorites. And you want to know something funny?
Hmm.
The glass was blue.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because it looks green.
And when I was all done, I looked at it and I said, this is from Normandy. Normandy is famous for apples. And the recipe has apples in it and apple cider. And here I have a blue glass. So I turned it into apple cider in Photoshop.
Nice. Yeah, it's beautiful. Like looking at the way the light plays with this.
Yeah,
really
that was one of my
technique.
favorites, and it's a really nice recipe. You probably know the name Dorie Greenspan.
Oh, of course. I've had her on the show. She's amazing.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I was really flattered when my last book came out. She and her husband came to one of my book signings, and they bought a book.
Oh.
And we've corresponded several times. We had the same editor. When I first met well, editor named Rux Martin, who is highly regarded as a culinary editor. And I went to Dorie. I stood in line for her to sign one of her books for me. And I reached out, shook her hand, and said, we have the same editor, Rux Martin. And she stopped signing books and leaned back and looked right in my eye and said, "Don't be late." Okay. I got one of those editors, do I? She was right. Yeah, she's super. And that was a recipe. We have her cookbooks, and that was one of the recipes we've cooked here. And I do this all the time. I'll taste something from a cookbook or a restaurant, and I'll taste it, and I'll say, "This is marvelous. I can do it better on the grill." And that's what I did here. And she gave me permission to use it, and I give her full credit, but I veer from her original recipe by doing the grill.
You are the Amazon May 2025 Best of the Month pick. How does that feel for you to have that kind of achievement?
I don't know what it means. I don't know what it means. I don't know if that is a reflection of the interest in the book before it hits the market shelves. I don't know if that's some editor down there who likes it. I don't know what it means. I do know that when my last book came out, it rose rapidly to the top in cookbook sales. It was the number one selling cookbook for 3 or 4 months after it came out. And then it got bumped by Chrissy Teigen's cookbook.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm certain that the reason she bumped me is that she's on the cover unbuttoned down to here. And there's no way I can compete with that. In fact, I took the cover, and since I'm sort of a Photoshop guy, I replaced my body with Arnold Schwarzenegger shirtless and sent it to the publisher and said, "We got to change the cover." But it was, the book comes out May 13th, and to me, the measure of success is sales. So if it takes off and sells well, then I'll be very happy. Almost 300,000 copies for the first book. I hope this book reaches the same stratosphere. I don't know if it will. That's a lot. I think most cookbooks are doing great if they sell 10, 20,000 copies. So yes. 300,000 is just kind of like off the charts.
No, that's amazing. So I want to ask this one last question for you. What's next for you after you have this out now? What does the future hold?
Couple of interesting things. Number one, I've got a really great team around me, and I'm slowly but surely handing over the management of the website to my team.
Yeah,
and they're taking it and they're doing a great job. They're showing some innovation and creativity. And Clint Cantwell is now the president, and Clint is a great guy. He's a great recipe writer. He used to run the Kingsford website. He's been with me about 10 years. David Joachim is in charge of content on the website, and he has co-authored about 30 cookbooks with chefs. Chefs come to him and say, "I want to write a cookbook. I can cook, but I can't write." And so he does that. several of which have won James Beard Awards or IACP awards. I have Max Good, who tests grills and smokers full time. He's tremendous. So we've got a great team. There's others who participate part time. This is kind of inside baseball, but I've worked with, as an editor, I've worked with a lot of writers.
Yeah.
And a lot of writers who are not writers. They're people who have knowledge, expertise, but they're not trained as writers.
Right.
And one of the first things I teach them is don't try to write. Sit down and just barf up everything that you can think of onto the keyboard. And don't worry about what comes first and what comes next. Just get the ideas out. Norman Mailer once said, you don't write a novel, you rewrite a novel. Now, after you've got all your stuff barfed up, go back and put it in order, arrange it so it makes sense. And then when you've got it all organized, cut it in half. Get rid of all the stuff that is superfluous. And of course, they all cling to their words. Oh my God, no, you cut that sentence? How could you cut that sentence? But they have to do it. And it's tough. Well, I failed my own test. When I got the contract for this book, I did just that. I sat down, barfed it all up, and when I was all done, I had enough for 2 books. And I went to my editor and I said, let's do a 2-book set. It's never been done. A 2-book set will tell the buyer that this is definitive. It's the best. And, we look at Myron, Nathan Mervold, he's got a 6-book set. Let's do a 2-book set on barbecue. And she said, let me talk to marketing. And marketing said, nope, $60 and up. There's no market for it. It won't sell. You'll kill it. So she said, cut it back to 1 book. Well, that meant a whole nother year. We had to press the deadline. It took me a year to take 2 books and cut it down to 1.
Yeah.
So now I have to, and writing a book is a lot of work, and it's painful. And
Yes.
I mentioned earlier how I've worked long hours for many years. I'm really looking forward to taking some vacation time with my wife. We're both, she's 71, I'm 76. We want, hopefully our feet and our ankles will hold out a while longer, and we want to go visit more cool places. But I do have in a folder on my desk everything I cut from that 2-book set. And there's some good shit in there.
Yep.
And if I wanted to devote maybe a year of what little I have left in my life, I could probably turn out another good book. And what's good, there's something really cool about this book. It's focused on culinary art.
Yeah.
I was an art major. And that's one of the reasons I chose this light painting stuff, because it was very artistic. I wanted to talk about cooking as an art form. And I wanted to make the case that as an art form, it should be considered right up there with music and painting and sculpture, and that it should be considered one of the fine arts. And I make that case, and then I try to demonstrate it. So will I have time to do it? I don't know. If I don't, will I be able to take some of that content and sell it to a magazine? I don't know. We'll see. It's good stuff.
Do you think with the popularity of like Ottolenghi and like shows like The Bear that the world is kind of catching up with that thought that food is a fine art?
Yeah. I mean, there are an awful lot of people who they go to an expensive, fancy restaurant and they eat tweezer food and they just don't get it. And I was still hungry when I left.
Yeah.
It's not that kind of food. And in this book, I try to explain that it's art, and you have to approach it the same way you would going into an art gallery.
Yeah.
You have to say, wow, look at the colors. Oh my goodness, what an amazing combination of flavors. What is the berry that he used here? I've never heard of that berry before. and really treat it as an art rather than as a meal. And that's a concept that is not really percolated down very well.
Yeah. Meathead, I loved getting a chance to talk to you today. I can't wait for everybody to see the book and actually tell book patrons in the library about this. The Meathead Method will be out on May 13th. Meathead, thanks for being on the podcast.
Dean, I'm glad we finally hooked up. This is a really good conversation. I get interviewed a lot, but not at this level, and I appreciate it.
And that's the last page for this edition of the Well Seasoned Librarian. We trust you enjoyed Dean's insightful discussion with the one and only Meathead about his fantastic new book, The Meathead Method. A BBQ Hall of Famer's secrets and science on barbecue, grilling, and outdoor cooking with 114 recipes, released just this week. Be sure to grab your copy at your favorite bookstore or online retailer. Craving more smoky knowledge? You can find Meathead's grilling expertise and food science deep dives at AmazingRibs.com. We've included the link in the episode description. Until next time, we will see you in the library